Hello everyone, welcome to Sundays with Solus number 10. My name is Josh.
My name is Brian.
And I'm Mikey.
As you may have noticed, this Sundays with Solus is audio only. If you didn't catch the discussion that was had quite some time ago, it's shifting to audio only just because if you check our previous videos, it's basically what we're doing anyways, and in the end we wanted a higher fidelity audio, so that's what we're getting. If you're watching this on YouTube, you could get a higher bitrate version via the website, and for now those podcasts are actually going to be in TWIS, and that'll be the case until I get podcast specific RSS feeds up, so it'll be one for FLAC and one for OGG. Anyways, so that'll all be sorted out, and I'll have some sort of social networking post across everywhere when I have more details on that, but I'm going to pass it on to Ike to talk about some of the work we've done after the snapshots.
Yeah, let's start on a controversial one here. First of all, we've disabled Wayland. And I know it's the sexy thing for distros to do nowadays, but we have had nothing but problems with it. Some people might have had bugs where they're logging out and then they can't log back in again, or sometimes it's just not logging in the first time. That's due to the way that Wayland is currently using an older GDM in Solus, because in turn we're using an older System D. So until such point as we got System D updated later in the cycle, then GDM will follow, and then we'll re-enable Wayland. But for now, it's X11 only. Epiphany was fixed. There was a crash involved in that. I think you fixed that, Josh, didn't you?
Yes, so what the issue was, you wouldn't be able to change certain keys that were within like the web schema, such as user agent. So I fixed that and I submitted that upstream, and they'll reply to it in due time, I guess.
Cool. I released Y package version 21, and that only had minor fixes in, if I recollect. One of them was fixing the Maison stuff for the Budgie desktop build. I feel like there was some other stuff in it, but obviously not that interesting. We've had updates to Firefox, Thunderbird, Kden Live, libgit 2. The kernel itself even got an update, which is now on 4.9.24. And we did actually have one of the updates go out, cause some regressions for some guys. It was due to using the VGA equals current parameter. But because we got Clear Boot Manager integrated nowadays, you could just boot back to the old kernel if you were affected, update, get the new kernel, and everything's hunky-dory again.
And CBM is already coming in handy.
Yeah, it's kind of already proven itself there. Along with the libgit 2 stuff, that actually helped enable Git integration with GNOME Builder, which was a bug on the tracker, so we got that updated to 0.25, I believe. And we've also got Soul Build updated now to use version 2.5. UPower was fixed. UPower is the power monitoring and management daemon that runs in the background. It's also the guy that's supposed to do something if your battery runs out. Like tell you, hey, your battery's run out. There was a bug in the older version, which was 0.9.4, which effectively meant it was breaking anytime it hit a critical action, respawning, and that was why you get dozens of battery icons up in Budgie. You'd get a load of critical notifications, and then it would just die. We fixed that by updating to a Git version, because they haven't yet released 0.9.25, I believe it's going to be. So we're just using the Git build for that now. It might be 4 or 5, I'm not even sure of the numbers. Basically, it's an unstable build.
Yeah, I was going to say, they haven't had an update in, 21 months or something? So there's
something
a lot
like that, yeah. It's badly needed, but the problems we've had, like with battery icons and things not updating, all directly traced to that UPower update. Another thing that we managed to come across, or rather decided to come across us, was during the release last Sunday. It was planned for Sunday, but it actually landed on the Monday morning. The reason for this is our repo management scripts. When we're doing any kind of builds in Solus, as everyone knows, they go into unstable first. We test them, stabilize them, put them into stable. That's all managed by a script called binman, which ironically is now more like the trash that the name represents, because it took 104 minutes just to sync the repo, which then took us past, and then we had to redo the version numbers, reissue the bits in the release notes. So basically,
a base layout.
Yeah, that was painful. Like literally 104 minutes waiting for this thing to sync, and basically when it was first made, we'll call it a design flaw to be polite here. When it was first made, it could easily cope with however many packages it had at the time. But as we've grown, at the time of the sync, I counted the packages afterwards, and basically, even though we might have like 6,500 active candidate packages in the repo, you have back versions to allow updates from older indexes to still work, you have Delta updates, and that actually grows out to about 75,000. And every time a new package comes in, instead of a package set, it's then going through all of those packages again, reading them all, and dumping the index out. That doesn't work very well. So, because of that, I've made it my priority to fix. This is one of the biggest blockers we've had for enabling the community to contribute easier to Solus. We need the fine-grained control over the repository, but we also need packages to be immediately available. So if I push something now like a Firefox update, I need it to be there the second it hits the repo. And unfortunately, Binman is not in any shape for that. So I don't like using the word rewrite, but that's basically what we're doing with it. We're porting it to Go because it's a very, very ancient Python script. I mean, at this point, it's probably like 3.5 years old or something. So writing that in Go, renaming it as well because the name has dodgy connotations like Binman, really. Somebody takes up the bins. So now it's going to be called Ferried. It's spelled Ferried, but you'd pronounce it Ferried, as in it provides safe transport for packages, which that's kind of what a ferry is all about, right? You transport things safely. And that will drastically minimize the window between pushing an update and then actually hitting things. Which means for users, you actually get updates quicker, syncs take less time, so we can have more regular syncs. And more importantly than all that, with the infrastructure changes that we're doing to Solus at the moment, we're going to move all of our Git into Fabricator and have like a converged workflow, as it were. Will allow people from the community, once this stuff is done and the build stuff is done, to actually submit their own builds. Not the actual binary packages, we build those. But they'll be able to push their own updates and maintain their own packages in Solus now. So that means more updates, more people involved.
Yeah, because right now, it's a bit of a manual process on your end by getting their SSH key and determining, okay, what package are you going to be maintaining and updating the Gitolite stuff.
Yeah, it's very, very manual. You know, I've got to SSH in, I've got to edit the files by hand, as you've said, and it's a complete pain. Like, in this day and age, you know, I just want to go and click buttons on a web page and say, this guy is the maintainer of that thing. And that's now what I'm working towards. On top of that, I also want people to be able to push builds in parallel instead of waiting for them to queue. So that once that thing is pushed, they're not waiting around. It's immediately available. They can push the next thing that then depends on it. So it's basically a scaling operation, really. And it allows us...
It's fantastic if we ever do large scale, which we inevitably do, stack upgrades, whether it's GNOME or Qt or FFmpeg.
Yeah, I mean, once FFmpeg is hit there, it's in. We know there aren't going to be problems with push and build, and then boom, 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 rebuild everything. So it means we can land stuff quicker ourselves, but it also means other people from the community can land stuff quicker as well, which means that we're going to be more people building Solus outside of the core team at a much higher cadence. So Solus itself as a project will, you know, it's going to go through an explosion because of this, but a good kind of explosion. You know, like the cool guy one.
Yeah, not like the Samsung Galaxy Note kind.
I don't know what you're talking about there.
So along with that faster cadence, it's going to be necessary for us to be able to keep up with updates a lot better than we're able to now. And as we've talked about before, upstream tracking is inherently difficult. There's no straightforward way to do it for everything. So in my own masochistic way, I decided to write a way to do that. So Kappa is the project that I've been working on for the last couple of months now. I've recently gotten it to the point where, for the most part, the supported things that it does work, but the command line interface itself needs some work. So I'm working on reworking that whole command line experience. I'm thinking about switching to Cobra. I've been developing my own command line library around this, but I think that right now the most mature and the most stable Go library is Cobra for doing all of that. It does wonderful things for generating help texts and all of these subcommand features, so I think that's going to make a really, really nice tool. Currently, we have support for a ton of different upstream sources to be able to track things from. I'm planning on adding not just FTP and Git, but also now Bitbucket and support for crates.io. Crates.io is the API that we can query for all of the Rust software packages that'll help us update some of that stuff much more quickly. I did some testing yesterday, and this was kind of one of the largest scale tests that I've done of Kappa. I ran it against the entire Solus repository, and one of the things that I started noticing was that Launchpad was incorrectly reporting versions. So it would either tell me a version number that didn't match a string that I'd previously recorded, or it would actually give me an older version of a current release. So I had to spend a little bit of time figuring that out. I'm currently making the assumption that the last thing in the releases is the current release. I am doing some filtering on the release types and things like that, so it's possible that I either missed one of the types that is an actual release candidate, or that they have some inconsistency in how the JSON is getting produced from the API. So I'll have to take a look at that. So along with those version numbers, one of the other things that I've noticed is that we as a project have decided to standardize and normalize all of these version numbers as they come through, because it makes it easier for us to visually inspect new versions as it comes through. So when Kappa is going through and doing a comparison, it's actually looking at the version number that we have versus the version number that they are saying is the latest, and they don't always follow the same format. So, for example, if I had a version 2.47, the upstream version might be 2_47, or v2.47, or release-v2.47, and I can't tell you how many times I've seen this. So I'm going to have to spend some time normalizing the version numbers so it's a little bit easier to automatically detect when there's a new release. But I think that's going to work out pretty globally, and I'm not going to have to do anything specific for different providers, so that should be good. I have spent some time on the Github support this week. I haven't pushed the commits for this yet because I don't have the configuration stuff in place that I need to. But what I'll be doing is allowing you to set up either a local or global configuration for a GitHub API key that you can then use to query the repo API. That'll get you around any of the rate limiting that GitHub has now. I believe it's a limitation of 1,000 requests per day, which you can imagine in a repository of more than 6,000 packages, it might run out rather quickly. So I have tested that. It works. I just need to get that into its final form before I push that out to everyone else. So as part of that larger scale test, I actually ran it against the entire Solus Git repository. And what I found was that I was able to match about 1 in 3 of the packages that we already have and get the latest version for those. So that's actually pretty good coverage so far. But there's definitely still some limitations. One of the things that I need to spend time on, apart from Git, is also this HTML scraping aspect of tracking upstream. So a lot of places like KDE and GNOME, they'll have all of their tarballs listed in a similar directory format on the web, but that format is an HTML page. So I'm hoping what I can do is write an HTML scraping upstream provider that can look for a pattern for a particular file name or file string that it can then use to find the next version of a particular thing. That may have to be a little bit specific to each of the upstreams, but I'm hoping to template that so that it's less insane. So to recap, better CLI is coming. I'm working on some of the issues with the existing providers. We're hoping to add support for Bitbucket, Crates.io, and HTML scraping. And now we're going to have GitHub support for API keys.
So I had an idea there while you was just speaking, actually, about the rate limit. What if we set up a public monitor of this, say like updates.solusproject.com or something like that? So that if people were actually looking for things to do in Solus, then there's this public update monitor. And it'd be like a work list for everybody. And we could have that running, once every hour, every couple of hours, or even once a day. It wouldn't even matter. So we'd have that public work list there. And it's a way of people jumping in.
Yeah, we could absolutely do that. I've actually gotten it to the point where I started writing a tool to do this just for our Solus stuff. So it will go through, it'll look at a package.yaml file, look for the current version, the current sources. It'll go out and then check each of the sources for newer versions of those sources. If it finds them, it will report out to, right now I'm just printing to a file, but it will report the name of the package, the version number, the new version, and the new source link. I don't know how well that's handling multiple sources. I think it just prints out multiple in the list. But what I'm hoping to actually have that do is spit out a well-formatted HTML document. So we should essentially be able to generate automated reports of what is and isn't up to date.
So in theory, well, not in theory, in practice, you basically be building a dynamic site out of this almost. That these are the things that need updating, and then show it for each package. Someone can jump in. I mean, that in combination with the other infrastructure updates and then, the integration of community maintainers is going to make maintaining Solus even easier.
Yeah, and I can imagine us doing something like tying this into Sol Hub or leveraging Fabricator's APIs, whether it's Diffusion APIs or Conduit APIs, to really sort of sync together our...
Yeah, no, I see what you mean there, yeah. So if we had it up on the website, we could say somebody's already claimed this and they're already working on it. So you could have this global work list of updates, and people could just, assign it to themselves on Fab to take it, but then have it expire automatically after a day though.
One of the other things we might be able to do is actually use this when we find a new version to automatically have it go through and try to build the latest version. We still have to have an approval process to push it to the repository, but we would at least be able to know that no change need to be made in order to update it. So for a lot of the really simple updates where all somebody's doing is replacing a source with a new version, updating the version number.
Like Vim?
Yeah, Vim especially. Anytime there's a new version of Vim that comes out, we would know immediately or relatively soon thereafter. It would be able to then update the package.yaml, automatically try to rebuild it. If the build fails, we know there's something that a human needs to intervene with. If the build passes, we can take a look at the package that it generated to make sure everything is fine. If that works perfectly, we just flip a switch and it goes into the repo. Otherwise, we can pull it down, do extra testing, and figure out what we need to change to get it working.
And we'll be able to tie that into ABI reports to know immediately on a new release if it's going to have ABI changes that are going to necessitate rebuilds.
Yep, and then we'll be able to use our new needs rebuilds tag, or requires rebuilds, one of those two, to mark the task as actually needing that so we know ahead of time.
I mean, we could actually have the bot, because we're moving everything over to Fabricator anyway, I can put a bot together that'll do this and actually just upload the patch under a dedicated account so it's there for review if the build passed. So it can include the entire Git patch there and send it via Arcanist. So all we got to do is log on to dev.solusproject.com, look at it, see if it's janky or not, and then just merge it.
Be pretty great.
Yeah.
I assume we'll need to work out issues like RAML YAML.
Yeah.
There's always fun ones.
Yeah. Oh, my installs thing now has a single line where it's just replaced all the actual new lines with new line characters.
It's That's okay. Cool. All the Python stuff will be gone from the tooling soon. It's fine.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah. So alongside all that, I've been working on the redesign of the Solus website. So that started with the download page. So if you go to it now, or if you've gone to it to download the new snapshot, whether it's Budgie, our primary image, Mate, or Gnome, you'll see it has it has a new layout and the ability to actually choose your closest mirror automatically based on your geolocation, and of course being able to choose all the mirrors. So that's the initial rollout of just the download page as a really good example, but in the end we're aiming for a brighter aesthetic, providing more information on Solus itself, because admittedly it's very sparse, and shifting away from solely talking about Budgie to talking about all the experiences we provide, because actually at the time that the current website was developed, we only had the Budgie image, but we've obviously grown quite quickly since then, and now we have our 3 tailored experiences on separate editions. So it's important to show that off and show off the changes we make on each and why certain editions might be better for your use case. So in the redesign, we'll actually have a section to discuss the technologies we develop or use as well, like Linux, because that's been a big talking point with individuals in the community for quite some time now. So obviously that's something I want to address and just provide in general more technical information. So I need to work with IKEA on that, but expect that to be rolled out soon.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I would like to add on the whole website thing is, I mean, we started off with WordPress originally.
Oh God, don't remind me.
I know, I'm sorry. And then it was originally Evolve OS, and then obviously we had to go through the rename. And it's basically held the same sort of disparate messaging now for, Jesus, too many years. But it's always done that. It didn't grow, like the messaging didn't grow over the project itself. And originally, well, at the time when the first website was launched, a lot of the projects out there, like nobody had a good website back then. It was very far and few between. So the original idea was to go for something that looked more professional, but obviously over time that evolved into more basically corporate messaging, and it hasn't grown with the project itself. So what we're trying to do is better match the website to, Solus as an open source Linux-based distribution. We want people to see that part of it. So slightly easing off the corporate edge there and showing people what it truly is, what it's about. And yeah, we're kind of barren in the text department, but we recognize, that the messaging isn't great at the moment, and, it is being addressed, so don't panic.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the feedback we've gotten really is, for instance, there's no immediate notice that, okay, this is actually empowered and built upon Linux or like GCC or other GNU stuff. So it's important to highlight that, and that's something we're going to be addressing. So
also, the current website has been, I would say, retroactively updated, just so it's partially sorted now. So now on the homepage, it does explicitly say, that it's built upon open source and, built upon GNU/Linux. Like, that stuff is there, but it's kind of a stopgap measure until we have the new site design in place.
Yeah, and it's worth keeping in mind, too, that when the initial design of the website was created, we didn't actually have plans for that dedicated Solus page, because Solus at the time was just that one image of Budgie. So at the time, it felt more important to show off what we were doing with Budgie than what we were doing as Solus. But obviously, things have quite, pun intended, evolved since then. That'll never get old.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of what we used to be. We was the runt of the litter in terms of the distros out there. We were runt of the litter, right? And we was this little guy, and we had Budgie Desktop. But I mean, you fast forward a few years, and to say we've grown significantly is, it wouldn't even cover it. And nowadays, we have things that we really care about, like the integration, the performance, the experience. And as time has gone by, Budgie is the face onto Solus. Obviously, it's still an important part of Solus, don't get me wrong, but it's the face of it, and underneath is the stuff that matters. I mean, this is why we have different images now, because people want Solus for what Solus is, not just for what the face is. That's why you have the Mate and then you have the GNOME shell, because people want Solus itself, and it's that kind of stuff that has evolved significantly since the initial websites that we want to convey to people, like why you guys actually like and use it.
Yeah, but of course, we're constantly changing things up, and we already have plans for some changes in our upcoming snapshot, which is snapshot 3. There's no ETA, before you ask. There's no ETA. We don't do those. Murphy doesn't like us.
We've tried them. Murphy struck at the last minute on that Sunday. And to be fair, it wasn't really Murphy this time. It was just my bad script.
Which here's a conspiracy, may have been developed by Murphy, but...
Well, damn.
Anyway, so we have an upcoming System D upgrade, so maybe Ike could actually talk about why we need to do that, and then we're going to continue our upgrade of FFmpeg 3 to FFmpeg 3.3. We have a fantastic patch by a community member. I'm going to butcher his name, and I'm sorry, but Heroes, I believe, has done a lot of fantastic work and was actually the individual that did provide the patch for our VLC upgrade for FFmpeg, which is really put the nail in the coffin as to the final blocker for FFmpeg. So
System D, huh?
Yeah.
So we've kept on an older System D for a while now because I didn't want to update it. It's a pain in the neck. But, over time, you don't want things developing cobwebs. As we saw in the last update, we really went for it in terms of getting the older stuff back up at where it should be. System D is one of those components, and unfortunately, because it's older, it does have some bugs and behaviors that are not in line with what some newer stuff is expecting, like GDM. So what we was getting under GDM 3.24 is that things like PollKit didn't work, which by itself doesn't sound like a lot, until basically none of your desktop permissions work. You can't mount disks, etc. It's ungood. So that's why we rolled that back to 3.20 until System D is done, which I will be doing over the next couple of weeks anyway. There's a couple of straggling core stack updates to be done, but once that part is out the way, just keep rolling, as it were.
All right, well, I think that's about it for Sundays with Souls, unless any of you have more surprises for us.
I have Pringles.
Oh, you bastard.
You have to share now.
No, you're not having my Pringles.
You can't bring food without bringing enough to share.
No, because in my contract with myself for Solus, this isn't going to work, is it? Never mind. You can have some next time.
Okay. Well, you can tune in next time. Whenever that next time may be, we will find out next time. But thank you for tuning in, and bye-bye.
I know.
Bye now.